And with the traditional role, as families may have been set up, of one person went out to work, often the man, the woman would stay at home and look after the children, run the household, and so on. Yet now everything's changed and anyone can do anything, which is really amazing in many, many ways. But now cost of living is so high, kind of both people need to go out and work.
Mm.
And it's become less of an opportunity and choice of who wants to do that, and actually where would you like to spend your life? Who would you like to raise the children? Do we want to have children? That sort of thing. To now becoming this frantic juggling act of trying to keep everything together, which now women often are at home with the children because they are the people who give birth to the children and feed the children for a period of time and also recover from that. But then they also may need to work and build a career, and then there's that pressure of, we have this opportunity to do that, so what do you mean you're not going to go out and work? What do you mean all of this? Or I have a really high mortgage because housing prices are so high, so I actually have to do that. Or I'm a single parent. And it all juggles on. That this traditional format, which was flawed in some ways, in many ways, but now we have the freedom of everything. Yeah, people aren't that much happier. People aren't that much more fulfilled. We aren't living our lives in this freedom. If anything, we have less freedom than we did when we had to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we've lost, what was, when you have more defined roles, you have clarity. And there's something about clarity that we know what we're doing. We know whether we've done a good job of that or not. We know what's expected of us, and there's clarity. There's something around clarity and predictability that makes us feel safe. Right. And I think what so much has changed, the landscape of work, the landscape of parenting, the landscape of different roles in the home has completely changed. But what we need to be doing is having the conversation. And this is where self-worth comes back into it, right? If I'm feeling resentful because I'm always doing A, and I wish my husband did more of this, but I'm not saying anything about it. We're not able to reassess some of those roles. We need to be having open dialogue and conversation, because if we're kind of pushing again, kind of moving into burnout, pushing beyond the limits of our resources, um, we need to be saying that circumstances have changed. We need to relook at these roles. We need to look at the different division. We just need to be talking to each other. Otherwise, if we're not, and we're carrying resentment, and this is often what happens to people pleasing, where it's often what happens in when we just do what we always do because we feel like we should, and we've never really questioned it, is that we start doing it resentfully, or it costs us a lot, or it is breaking us. That starts eroding connection, right? Because we're feeling really unseen, we're feeling unheard, we're feeling resentful, we're feeling like we're carrying more than our fair share. And we start reading stories into that. We write stories about the things that we don't know because we like certainty. So I might think, he doesn't care that I'm doing this. He's just waltzing off to work. And we start writing these stories, and then we start acting off the back of them. And it all just gets really confusing. So this is where honesty and self-esteem is being able to say, you know what, we need to talk about this because I'm not okay. This is too much. How can we relook at this together? So it's about having open dialogue about the limits of your resources. And again, when the more you respect yourself, the more you're able to see when you're just continuously pushing past them, and you want more for yourself. You don't want to live like a frazzled mess. It's not nice or pleasant for yourself or anyone around you. So it's conversation and connection, so we can live without this kind of simmering resentment underneath, and just feeling unseen and unheard by the people, but also by ourselves.
It's quite interesting how you say that if we have a situation that's not addressed, then we come up with a story or a reason or some sort of reasoning that will be why, because in our brains we don't like that open loop. This is why we hate a cliffhanger or a book that doesn't give us an ending. It really annoys us, and we must click next episode, because what happens, like, do they find her? Do they not? Does she just disappear? Like, it's that horrible thing that even books and books are, no cliffhanger. It's advertised as a good thing, because when we have that open loop,
Yeah.
it just goes round and round and we can't close it off. Therefore, well, this didn't happen. and I don't know why. So I'm going to come up with an answer because I've not addressed it and I've not had that. So I need to close this loop in some way. So I'm going to come up with this story, which may be accurate, probably isn't that positive. And then, as you say, it goes more and more. And it's that
Mm.
saying of things under the carpet. And if you just imagine this carpet gets higher and higher, and suddenly you're both kind of,
Start tripping over it, like it's squidging out sideways. It's just,
you're a frazzled
yeah,
mess, as you said.
no one's feeling honoured and no one's feeling seen. And there's just
Mhm.
irritability and snarky comments and just hurt, really, because we feel hurt and we feel unseen. A lot of the reason we feel unseen is because we haven't found the words to articulate it, or because we haven't been able to acknowledge how valuable that is for ourselves and how
Or we
we
don't feel
deserve to
worth.
feel heard. Yeah.
Maybe we don't feel worth actually pointing it out because we think we deserve that action if it was a poor action or something. Maybe that links
Mm,
into it as well. There's so many different
absolutely.
ramifications. But then if someone says, right, okay, Anna, I need help. I need a fresh start. I need
Mhm.
to spring clean my life. I'm going to move somewhere else. I'm going to do something. How do I restart? How do I start over? What do you
Mhm.
say?
So I think two things. One is looking at your internal dialogue and thinking, how can I, like, if I catch myself saying, for goodness sake, what's wrong with you? Just think, okay, what would a mate say to me right now? She'd be like, you're absolutely frazzled. Of course, you're going to drop some ball at some point. Anyone can only juggle so much. Just think of that kinder, more grounded internal dialogue that feels so much more supportive, and just say it to yourself and you feel like an absolute muppet and it feels really exhausting because it has to be so intentional for a while. But the most amazing thing, and this is the beauty of neuroplasticity, this is the beauty of repetition, is that in time that more compassionate grounded voice will gain volume. And I think people can argue, but it's that internal critic that gets me striving and thriving. And if you thought about two teachers, right, when you were a kid, and you had one teacher that was just terrifying and shouted all the time, and everyone was really good and they got really good grades, right, because they were absolutely terrified of getting shouted at and shamed in front of everyone. And then you had the teacher next door that never shouted, but you knew that if you did something wrong, they'd come and they'd talk to you and they'd work it out, and they'd say, oh, it's hard when you're learning, and they also got good grades too. And it's like, which one would you rather have? A kind and compassionate internal dialogue is like a cheerleader, coaching you along the way. I'd rather that than someone with a stick beating me up for every single thing. And we can get to good places with a good dialogue. Like, we really can. We'll get there much happier. So work on your internal dialogue. Second thing I would say is start noticing what you're not saying. And it's not a challenge to say it from the off. But if you're in a conversation with a mate and they say something, it just doesn't sit well with you, and you feel uncomfortable, maybe you feel a bit hurt, just start noticing what you're not saying. I am not saying, oh, that didn't sit well with me. Can we talk about it? It might be that I don't know, you need something or you want something or you need some support. And it's kind of like you feel that come up in you that, oh, I really want to ask them if they can just take that project off my plate at work a little bit because it's just too much, but you don't want to. So you internalize that. And then so when you start noticing what you're not saying, expressing, sharing, asking for, it starts presenting you with choices, and you start thinking, actually, what would it be like for me to ask that, to share that, to say that? And then in time, you will just notice little opportunities to try that out. And the best thing is that it just develops your confidence. It helps you realize that people can withstand your boundaries. It helps you realize that, yes, some people will misunderstand you. Some people say and do the wrong thing. But actually, a lot of the people in your life will respect, honor, and accommodate for you being a person with needs and feelings and all of that.